Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about breathing, bracing, and core stability while pregnant, and also good for postpartum and probably even some pelvic floor issues. Why we're going to talk about it differently than my other breathing and bracing videos that maybe you've seen is I have been working on it differently, and you should do some things maybe a little different than when we do breathing and bracing for back pain or breathing and bracing because we're going to do a max lift. So we want to think about it a little bit differently. So the first thing is exactly the same, right? So I'm going to be here, and what I want to do is I want to take my breath in through my nose, and I'm still expanding. I want to feel my sides expand, so my diaphragm is still compressing down as much as it can and creating some pressure in here. But then when I exhale, I'm really gonna let these muscles contract, right? So that's a pretty big difference. If you can see kind of from the side, if I'm relaxed and I breathe, you can see some good engagement. And I think that's something people don't always think about is you still can contract your core and your ab muscles and do a little bit of a pelvic tilt while you're pregnant. It's not like these muscles just can't work anymore. And you need to work on that because if you don't, you're gonna have more back pain. You probably will have a greater chance at having a diastasis, which is like that ab separation. And so it's important to work on that breathing work. While I do that exhale, I also want to mention that it's kind of tightening upward, and it's also a Kegel, so a little bit of a pelvic floor contraction while you're doing that exhale, okay? So anyone can practice this. You don't have to be pregnant to do it. Obviously, I think I'm really lucky because I've spent so much time working on breathing and figuring out how to use my core that this has been pretty easy for me to work on. So just remember, it's in, expand with pressure, out, tightening and drawing that pelvic floor up, okay? So then we'll talk about the stability part of it. It's really good to use that breath when you're doing activity, right? So, you know, if I'm doing a squat, I wanna think about my inhale and drawing up as I come. So I'm using a little bit of that. I'm not just keeping pressure the whole time, because that's not always the best thing, right? That's when we talk about that coning, where we have too much pressure pressing anteriorly on our abdominal wall. So I can actually show you probably a cone. So if I think about like squeezing my abs a certain way, it comes to a point, okay? This here, whereas if I think about doing that exhale and breathing up, it's a lot flatter and more stable. So I don't have that really big pressure going forward. So that's what you want to think about. That's what we don't want coning, because we don't want that anterior pressure. And then any movement can start to have coning. I can cone when I squat. I can cone when I go overhead. I can cone when I hang, do sit-ups. And a lot of those things, especially now I'm in my third trimester, I'm not kipping, I'm not really hanging, I'm not doing sit-ups. But if I didn't focus on my core during a squat or a press overhead, I likely would have that pressure and cone some. So it is important to understand, how do I control this using my breath the best possible? And then even if you're walking and standing and working, doing stuff that you do in your life, this is gonna feel a lot better if you can get into this position some. So don't be scared to use your abs.